This video is brought to you by my rap album, Nocturnal Eternal. I did all the production on it and all the other stuff besides the cover. I think it's pretty good. The link is in the description. Listen to it. I was in the living room. My family was watching, I don't know, wrestling or something. I wasn't particularly interested in what was on TV, so I was in the corner of the room by myself on my DSi. I think we had Little Caesars that night, but this wasn't a regular night after all. That night, got an incredibly rare $20 DSi points card from GameStop. As a kid, my game taste was entirely dictated by my budget. I could gaslight myself into thinking any game was good, as long as it was cheap. This is something I never quite grew out of, given my insanely large Steam library. So I was looking through the DSi store, and I went to the 1000 points section, and clearly I was feeling like royalty that night. I remember seeing the 4 low-quality screenshots in the DSi store and being intrigued. I think there was a cool-looking portrait of an anime bunny character, and seeing that kind of like one of those virtual console games on the Wii we had. A lot of my thought process was buying games was about the content for the money. If I was going to pay upwards of $10 whole, this game better be good. So I imagine this game was some kind of platformer or RPG or something. At the very least, a cool anime style. So it must have a story since there are portraits, dialogue boxes, and I like stories. So I carefully think it over. And I download the game in exchange for 1,200 points. The game was called Cave Story. That decision changed my life. You know, in retrospect, I think I lucked out with my game taste. I could have wanted only $60 multiplayer shooters like the rest of my family were playing at the time, but I only used a Wii and a DS, so it was very common for me to delve into older games or, you know, more budget games because they're cheaper. You see, I was a hand-me-down kid. I got, or tracked down, everything else my family was bored of. For instance, I played through Pokemon Sapphire until the Elite Four 3 times because we had a cart with no data on it and a GBA still. I played Pokemon Coliseum until the last bit of the game because our Wii played GameCube games. I played Pokemon. Actually, I played a lot of Pokemon back in the day. Paper Mario, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Super Mario Galaxy, Sim Animals, my broken disc of Pokemon Battle Revolution. These masterpieces are what filled out my childhood and gave me the foundation of how I think about the world and gaming and art today. What was limited in budget was not limited in imagination. Back then, I could look at a game like My Pokemon Ranch and get immersed in Pokemon just fucking around. Can you tell I really like Pokemon? Tell I'm autistic. A good chunk of my life, I didn't use the internet for anything besides Therapy.net. I didn't know what indie games were. Games were just games, I guess. But of course, after I clicked that download button, everything changed. It was no longer just Pokemon and Mario. Soon after I finished Cave Story, I went to the local department store and found a copy of Mega Man Zero Collection for $20. Well, Mega Man Zero Collection could have possibly happened first, but this was a long time ago, so I have no clue. It was influential on me. I progressively seeked out experiences like that. Found the Cave Story wiki and had the most insane experience of my life when I discovered it had another ending. I listened to the soundtrack over and over again. I told my friends about it. I probably drew quote and curly brace shipping art or something. I was obsessed. Why did this game strike a chord with me? Well, Cave Story is the poster child for the term limitation breeds creativity. Inspired by the Famicom era and games like Castlevania and Metroid, the creator of Cave Story, Pixel, managed to perfectly capture the tone of the era. Cave Story had a thick atmosphere and a well-realized world, despite it being developed to basically be an 8-bit styled game. And just like Metroid before, Cave Story indulges in the mystery of its setting, the cave and the island. It's not afraid to become eerie, dark, and serious. But on the flip side, Cave Story also has a good bit of comedy to it, having a few good jokes. The storyline is simple but depthful. The characters are all charming and distinct. I mean, this game has fucking curly brace, by the way. There is lore that, for once, actually adds to the story and gives you a new perspective on the characters and their actions. A way I describe Cave Story is if Mega Man was a Square Enix RPG, if that makes any sense. All this world building and characterization is on top of a game that's pretty well designed. Actually, can we roll back to that Curly Brace thing? I fucking love Curly Brace. Her design is so damn cute. Curly's the only character in the game that partners up with you. He's also playable in the Cave Story Plus edition. It's not very different as a playthrough or with much dialogue differences, but it's pretty fun. Curly's whole deal is that she's just very helpful and delightful to be around. You only see her 2 or 3 points in the game, but she's just really cool and chill and cute, and I think I drank too much RC Cola. Let me go to my original point. With few exceptions, like the Bushlands area or some parts of the Sand Zone area, I think this game is pretty much perfect. Well, as much as a one-man team designing an indie game alone in 2004 could be. I mean, that's not a backhanded compliment. I'm pretty sure it's the best case scenario of the circumstances. There are a few flaws that might have been ironed out with a bit of playtesting, like the start of the game, the backtracking, some of the parts being super hard, some of the parts being super easy, some of the parts being slightly confusing, some of the parts being completely opaque with no reasonable ways to discover them. It's not perfect, but I don't think the games that stick with me the longest are flawless. I think they're just emotionally resonant. There's a little something in all of my games that create a unique emotion for me, you know? There's always that one moment where I fall in love with games as a medium again when I discover a new favorite game. It's a damn near religious experience. Except Spelunky. Fuck Spelunky. Imagine a world where, I don't know, Studio Pixel went to a studio like Sony and they let him direct a big budget 3D AAA cave story team with 50 people or more, an open world, and a fucking battle pass, alright? In that strange universe, it's very possible that Cave Story would be a less flawed game than it is. It could be like, quote unquote, the perfect game or something. But I think the little things, the little flaws are what make Cave Story what it is. It's a passion project, a labor of love. And you can tell love is pouring out of every single inch of Cave Story. Every centimeter, every micrometer, every fucking nanometer. I think overall that's why Cave Story resonated with me and a lot of other people. It's a labor of love made by a developer who put hours and hours and hours into refining their game the best that they could possibly make it. I mean, Pixel literally scrapped the entirety of Cave Story from front to back at least once, if not more than once. He stated in interviews that he has literally made the final boss of that version and scrapped the entire thing. Cave Story is one of those games that proves independent game development will always have a place compared to AAA gaming. If the industry at its best is polish and scope, then indie games are detail and depth. The perfect example of this is Cave Story's music. From the interviews I've seen, Pixel's a humble person. He's never mentioned his musical skills being anything but utilitarian. He wants to make a game, so he made the music. Same interview said, quote, "For the Wii version, the music has been recreated by a professional musician. Going back to the original Cave Story, by the time it was completed, I'd listened to the background music enough times to hate it, so it's fun to play with new music," unquote. He doesn't consider himself to be a quote-unquote professional musician, at least in 2010, but Cave Story's soundtrack it's incredible. I mean, Pixel made a sound sequencing program to create the music here, and it surpasses all of its influences. In fact, I think that the soundtrack is probably the reason that it's one of my favorite games. Like I said before, Cave Story's narrative is well written. It generally takes you on this emotional adventure. So to match this, Pixel wrote this soundtrack that matches every single emotional bit to a fucking T. From Balrog's theme, which is bouncy and wacky, to the scratchy and rough Labyrinth W theme, to the hype battle theme Eyes of Flame, Cave Story has many songs that match the traditional Famicom vibe. But where Cave Story really shines in its music is everything that has the tone of melancholy. Despite being so cute, Cave Story is a very sad and lonely game. Cave Story is one of those few pieces of media that I would consider backloaded. I think in a way it's kind of a reward with keeping up with it. Halfway through the game, there's this tonal shift, and all the music has a new tinge of sadness to it. It's beautiful storytelling. Tracks like the chorus theme and the waterway theme are perfect for their part of the game. They convey the sense of mystery and wonder of the island, while also conveying the warring events that happen to you and will happen to you for the rest of the game. The best theme in the game, and honestly one of the best pieces of video game music I've ever heard, is Balcony. Imagine this. You're playing Cave Story in your DSi, the most thrilling and engaging game you've probably ever played up to this point. The game has emotional highs and lows, it's had tragedies and comedies. You've been playing it all day to the point where it's getting dark outside. So you're in this final cave of the game, most likely the hardest single area you've played up to this point. Over and over again, you try to make it through this penultimate challenge, dodging these instant kill blocks near the end, and you finally make it to the last door. You open the door, and you've done it. You finally reach the top of the island. You see the sunlight and the gray clouds surrounding you. You're high above where you started all those areas before, all those adventures you've been on, all those people you've met, and all the things you've been through the story. They're all below you now. All these hours of play, all those characters you met, they're all waiting for you. This is your chance to beat the Doctor. This is the final challenge of the game. Your adventure is almost over. This is the end game. I've never had a game convey this deep sense of sadness of being almost finished with an adventure as well as this before. In Universe, you're immersed with the feeling of trying to beat the Doctor and saving them Amiga, but in real life, you're almost finished with a game that you've grown to love. A game that has already changed the way you think about the medium you've enjoyed for your whole life. This is the same emotion I get from RPGs when I play through, I don't know, Pokemon Platinum, Final Fantasy VII, Omori, Mother 3. All these games know when you're reading near the end, so they kind of signal you're winding down. You have to mentally prepare yourself for the ending. This happens with any piece of art I deeply connect with, honestly. If something takes you on a trip, you want it to last forever. By the end, you're like, damn, that was a good-ass game. I notice I feel more nostalgic for melancholy vibes than happy ones, because I think they feel more real to me. Because that's mostly how life is, you know? Good tinged with some bad, happy tinged with some sad. Now, by the end of the normal ending of Cave Story, you mostly feel unsatisfied with the state of things. I think that most people wanted a nice ending where everyone lives happily ever after, but, you know, after the normal ending, that's not the case. Characters die, plots lie unresolved, and the place where you spent your entire adventure literally crashes and burns to the ground. I know how unsatisfying it was. I was there. I experienced this shit. Now imagine my surprise when I found out there was a true ending. I literally found out about the happiest ending of the game through a random wiki page visit. You can't make this shit up. This kind of thing doesn't happen anymore. If there's a secret ending to something, it will get discovered, and you will see an algorithmically chosen recommendation for it on YouTube or whatever. I think there was some kind of magic to that kind of discovery that I missed. Aside from the true ending, which I don't want to spoil, there's also a bad ending. When I was young, the ending scared the shit out of me. In the latter half of the game, you get the chance to escape the island before it's going to be ravaged by the Doctor. So if you choose to, you get this sequence where you escape with Kazuma to some unseen mountain and live your life in fear and obscurity while the Doctor takes over the world using the friends that you've made along the way. Until you reset the game, all you see is the word end in all caps with a black screen and damn depressing music over it. This game makes in no uncertain terms that you are a coward and let everyone down. It's genuinely like that one AVGN joke from the Friday the 13th episode.
You're dead, your friends are dead, your family's dead, your fucking pets are being skinned alive, your mom's a fucking whore, you suck at life, the whole world hates you, you're going to hell, live with it. Game over.
Slightly earlier in the story, you come back to the hub town, it's completely empty. When I was younger, this moment was also pretty terrifying. I distinctly remember that I was alone in the house when this happened, so there's this kind of chilling atmosphere about a familiar place becoming empty and abandoned. This is the kind of fear that horror games can only dream of. You know, it's the expectations. I was expecting a story like, oh, let's get the Doctor and that witch and get our friends back. Not, wow, everyone is dead and it's my fault because I didn't finish the game fast enough. And just so you know, the boss immediately before this internally is timed in the game, by the way. And by the way, you get an alien medal if you finish it very soon. I just wanted to mention that. So you look across the town and there's nothing. Nothing at all. Nobody's there. Nothing. And you finally look in the house in the bottom right corner of the village, and the song Pulse starts to play. You make your way towards the last areas of the game. I think Pulse is the song that exemplifies this melancholy the best. It's downtrodden with a tinge of hope. It's a lullaby. It's a nap after a stressful situation, or a moment of deep introspection. It's the same vibes for me as the Resident Evil 1 remake save room, except where the Resident Evil 1 is the only warm place in the game, Cave Story is a very warm game with this as the only cold area. In the totality of things, Cave Story is just that. It's warm, very personal and inviting game. It's a game where I just can't be mad at it because it really tries. It wants to be the best game it possibly can be. Every element of this game combines to make an experience that's absolutely unforgettable to me. Why did I vibe with Cave Story? Well, it feels like a fully realized world within its means. Just like the Fly episode of Breaking Bad, it conveys so much with so little, while being a thoroughly enjoyable experience. It's a game that surpasses its influences by just loving them so much it distills what made them good, like down to the core. Why Metroid and Castlevania are fun in the first place. After all is said and done, I think Cave Story is a game that's just full of life. That's all I want from media at the end of the day. We're all living, so why not express it? After I played Cave Story, I tried for years to recapture that feeling I got when I first played it. That's a sign of a good game. Now, through everything I've played, I don't think I've ever quite captured the feeling. In the best case, I get a completely different feeling that I want to recapture, something new that my brain wants. But I'll never be able to experience Cave Story again for the first time, unless I suffer a head injury caused by a rogue Acme piano falling out of the sky. Overall, what have we learned? Nothing, probably. But I think vibes are important. A game isn't a science after all, it's an art. And when I look at this sprite I poorly upscaled, I will always have these warm, vague, fuzzy memories of playing my DSi in the corner of my living room, about to discover something life-changing. Thank you, Cave Story.
listen. Now listen.
Shut your stupid